Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We end our show, like always, with Maury's favorite segment, Our Moment in History. Today we discuss Lyndon Baines Johnson's Great Society and its effects several decades later. Not such a great society anymore, is it?
Well, I have to look at it in the perspective, I've got a big advantage of being at an age right now and still having my marbles, hopefully, and being able to look at history and having lived it. And one thing I remember very vividly, we are now here going into the middle of September. 50 years ago, Kennedy was assassinated on September 23rd, 1963, in Dallas, Texas. I'm not going to give you my basic theories on it because I don't think this is the time and the place for it, but you know what I think. I think one of the most evil presidents ever in the history of the United States was Lyndon Johnson. Now, here's the way I look at it. First of all, he was a man who was a logical, intelligent man. He was really brought along by Roosevelt as a new guy that was going to be big in the leader, and he ran the Senate like with an iron fist, and he had everything on everybody. He was like J. Edgar Hoover was with the FBI. He had a book on everybody.
Can you imagine if they would have had the internet and smartphones and access to all this stuff back then?
Oh, and we'd have a dictatorship today.
Or Hitler and Goebbels, if they could have ever imagined what this would have turned into?
Yeah, they'd be jealous.
Yeah.
No, here's what. He got us into Vietnam. Vietnam was the worst thing this country ever did because, first of all, that was strictly a war between elements. And Ho Chi Minh was not even an international communist. He was a national communist in the sense he wanted to have not North Vietnam and South Vietnam, which they did after the war. And Johnson said, no, we got to go in there, even though we knew that the South Vietnamese were as bad or worse than North Vietnam. And at those days, we still had conscription. We had 500,000 people in Vietnam. 50 or 60,000 got killed, and God only knows how many wounded. But what came out of that, cocaine, a lot of
the hippie movement, the 60s, all these counterculture.
Exactly. And then suddenly and Johnson encouraged, look, I'm not going to get into the good and the bad and the whys and the wherefores of the civil rights movement, how it was done, but I know Kennedy was a very smart guy. Kennedy has not been given the credit. I love the guy because I was a young man and I was made president of my company because of Kennedy, because a young man was appreciated if he had something on the ball. Kennedy, when he faced down Khrushchev on what could have been a nuclear war, back in 1962, he did it the right way. And he did it, and he was a patriot, and he was a man of strength. When he cut taxes, even at a time when the economy wasn't doing so well, when he faced down the steel makers and told them, you're going to have to work with your people and so on. This was a great leader. And suddenly, the young people in this country, how we are being criticized today, in those days, they were taking great solace from a leader like Kennedy. Worldwide, the world was going to be a better place, and suddenly he's gone. And as far as I'm concerned, a man of evil intent came into power, and he has saddled us with entitlements. The so-called war on poverty, it wasn't a war on poverty; it was a war off poverty for the rest of the country. Pull the rest of the country down and bring it down to the lowest level, and then dole it out, because that gives me, Lyndon Baines Johnson, the power to give it to whom I'm giving it to. That was real evil, and that was the beginning. The height of this country, as far as our basic values were concerned, families, the idea of living according to Judeo-Christian values,
50s.
On which, yes, the 50s were the greatest. That was a wonderful year. Ever since then, the things that we're talking about now, social things.
From Ozzie and Harriet to Ozzy Osbourne.
There is no restraint anymore. I mean, I don't want to be superficial and say I used to, when the first time I walked on a plane, they wouldn't let me on unless I had a coat and tie on like we have right now. Now people go on airplanes
with their pants hanging out.
Exactly, and that's looked at as being chic and being up to date. To me, you know what I think civilization is based on? Control. and respect. If you don't have that, we're out of control, and we don't have any respect for each other. And somehow, I don't know how that's going to come back or if it comes back, but I believe the breaking point was the Lyndon Baines Johnson. And he was a big liar. You know how he got got civil rights passed? And it's not a judgmental thing. He did get it passed, and I give him credit for that, because there was a very strong racial movement in this country, and the black element in this country was really being badly treated. But the point is the way he got it. He got Everett Dirksen, a strong Republican leader, who was going to vote against it. And he brought him in, and he said, Dirksen, I'll tell you, 50 years from now, when they celebrate the fact that we've literally freed the slaves, like the Emancipation Proclamation, they're not going to remember Lyndon Johnson. They're going to remember Everett Dirksen. He was the guy that cast the decisive vote to pass the civil rights legislation in 1965. And he did.
But I don't think people remember either one of them.
Nobody. I've asked the question.
MLK would probably be the closest I would think that people would come to the civil rights movement.
I happen to think Martin Luther King was a great man. I think he did a wonderful thing, and I think he would have been ashamed of a lot of the things that are going on today. I happen to think he's one of my favorite people in modern history.
Well, you look at the family structure. You look at the faith and the religious element that is missing from this country. They've taken prayer out of school. They've taken mom and dad and separated them. The breakup of the family. I mean, this has all been very systematic over the last, 100 years, 50 years?
I think organized religion is no longer a fact of life in this country. And I'm not a progenitor of any particular religion in this, but I think the organizational religion, our founding fathers were not Christians as such, they were deists. Deists were people that believed in a power of God, a superior God. And today, even being an atheist makes you just as good as anybody that is not an atheist.
And, we're not trying to sit here and push people to be religious or not be religious.
Exactly.
But the breakdown and the debasement of the country, just when you think it can't get any lower, you hear a story that just goes lower and lower.
Social values are at the lowest ebb that I've ever seen them.
And like you said earlier, you've been paying attention for decades.
That's right.
And you think that Lyndon Johnson has a lot to do with this?
I think he had an awful lot to do with it, because I know how things changed after the joy of the Kennedy era, and the fact that he, in the economic arena, in the era of respect of people for him, created a sense of the future, which is gone.
And if John F. Kennedy were here today, he'd be shunned by the Democrat Party. He would be so far away.
He'd be shunned by a lot of people in his family.
Absolutely.